Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. A special warm welcome if this is your first Church Champions event. And of course, a warm welcome back to those joining us again. I'm Alex and I lead Faith in Later Life, where we are passionate about helping churches to reach older people with the good news of Jesus, grow in faith as lifelong disciples, and be mobilized in God's disciple-making mission. One of the questions I'm often asked is, how can we connect with those older people in our communities who we don't yet know? And that's a really good question. It seems that social prescribing could be one part of an answer to that question. So I'm really delighted to welcome Esther Platt to lead us in this session on social prescribing and community connection today. Esther works with the Church Works Commission and is passionate about connecting the church with health and wellbeing initiatives. She has co-authored research on social prescribing and community wellbeing and brings real insight into how churches can serve their communities well. Esther's going to share with us for about 35 minutes, and then we will have some Q&A. So please do add any questions that you might have throughout the session into the chat, and then we hope to answer them one by one towards the end. Esther, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm so looking forward to learning from you. Over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alex, and great to be with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I hope that you can see my slides okay. As Alex has said, I'm going to speak about social prescribing and community connection. I work for an organisation called the Good Faith Partnership, but one of the key projects that I have worked on over the last few years is called Church Works. And so I will just share a little bit about who we are in Church Works. So Church Works Commission is this organisation made up of 16 different commissioning organisations represented by senior church leaders, and together they span the breadth of the church across the UK. And the purpose of the Church Works Commission is to help churches and Christian organisations, just like Faith in Later Life, to collaborate with one another and the government around our three main priorities, which are wellbeing and mental health, vulnerable children and families, and poverty. And as part of that, we run events and conferences and webinars. We undertake research and new projects in order to encourage ecumenical, cross-denominational partnership working. And it has been brilliant over the last 4 years that we have been going to have been able to work with lots of different government departments and ministers. And the photo at the top is of our commissioners meeting with the faith minister, and at the bottom is a photo from an event that a big summit that we had back at the end of February, where we were able to get together lots of different people from across the breadth of the church and government and talk about how we can work well together. So that's a little bit about who we are. And today I'm going to talk about social prescribing, which has been around for a little while. It has been part of the NHS and the way that the NHS works since 2019, and has really grown in size and scope over the last 7 years. So as all of us, I'm sure, are aware, there are many things that impact our health that can't be treated by medicine and by a medical prescription. So things like loneliness, debt, low mood, grief, worries about housing or work, all of those sorts of things really significantly impact how we feel. And social prescribing is this mechanism that has been brought into the NHS to enable people who might come to their GP with some of those problems to be well connected to support that will help them with those and address those needs, where a medical prescription isn't the best thing for them. And so the way that this is done is a GP, or it's most commonly GPs, but it could also be other health professionals or other charities will refer people to someone called a social prescribing link worker. And these are often based at GP surgeries. In some areas of the country, they're employed by the council, but they will always be well connected to the GP surgery. And these social prescribing link workers will meet with the individuals that are referred to them, and they will have a conversation about where this person is at the moment and what matters to them, what kind of support they feel they need, and they will work with them to then, the social prescribing link worker should have this kind of bank of knowledge of the different support that is available in the area, and they will work with that individual to refer and link them to activities that are local to them. And as the NHS has developed social prescribing, they have put in place these sort of 4 pillars, which are very sort of broad categories of things that people might use social prescribing for. So advice, information and practical support. So things like social prescribers might refer someone to debt support or to housing advice, or to a charity that could help them get their weekly shop or pick up prescriptions. The second pillar is arts, culture and heritage. So that might be prescribing people to a community choir or to art classes, or to volunteering in their local heritage site. There are lots of really interesting things happening in that space. The third is physical activity. So, we're referring people to some kind of exercise that is appropriate for them, whether that's sort of things like a walking group or chair yoga or swimming, those sorts of things. And green social prescribing, which is nature and being outdoors. And so we are referring people to things like community gardens or allotments or walks, that sort of thing. And there is sort of growing evidence base and research around social prescribing, which evidences that it can do all sorts of things, which are probably not that surprising really when you think about what it's like to be a human being. That we know that social prescribing and connecting people to things that meet these needs can improve their health and well-being, can enable people to get the right support for them. And we know that across our communities there are some people who are well connected and who have resource and connections to be able to get support for whatever they might have, but there are also people who for whatever reason are more isolated or who don't have the resource to be able to connect with things that are good for their health and well-being. And so this is a way of enabling people to get better access to the help and support they need. It also reduces pressure on GP appointments and medical prescriptions, because those individuals who might have a need that actually isn't best addressed by medical intervention don't need to go and see the GP about that particular thing. And it promotes social cohesion and connection and being integrated into our local communities, which all of us as people who belong to church know that community is so important. The National Academy of Social Prescribing is the main organisation that is being funded by the Department of Health to implement social prescribing and to really embed good practice across the country. And there's a sentence on their website that I really like, which is social prescribing is the glue that links voluntary organisations with people who need their help. And so in terms of us as church, this is a great opportunity for where we have ministries or community activities that make a real difference to people's well-being and fit within those 4 pillars of social prescribing. It's an opportunity to connect with those people who would really benefit from being part of those activities. I'll refer to them a little bit later on as well, and I can put the link in the chat to the Social Prescribing Academy's website. We can also send it out in an email with the slides. But I would really recommend going to the National Academy for Social Prescribing, going to their website. They have a whole load of resources on social prescribing for older people, and they've done a lot of work with Age UK. So some helpful resources there. And as a result of some of the work that we've been doing at Churchworks, the National Academy have recently appointed a faith lead, and so they're also kind of gathering more resources and case studies around faith engagement with social prescribing. The National Academy have a newsletter. They share different training opportunities, networking opportunities as well. So I would recommend having a look at that. And so in some of the research and work that we have done, this is on the left, you can see a list of different activities and services that churches and faith groups provide. And this is obviously not an exhaustive list at all, but within that you've got kind of hobby groups for like arts and crafts or choirs. We knit and natter groups. We've got listening services and chaplaincy. We've got advice things for debt or for poverty, things like dementia cafes, yoga classes, food banks, a huge range of lots of different things. And we also have this quote from a social prescribing link worker who is reflecting on the fact that social prescribing is something that has recently been taken up by the NHS, but actually it's something that we have sort of been doing organically within church for a long time, that if someone from the community comes to someone in church leadership or a member of the congregation, we will often refer them to other activities and things that we're aware of to support them and connect them. And that is really what social prescribing is doing, but just with bringing the NHS into the conversation. And so I thought that it might be nice to just have a moment where I'm not talking, and I wonder if there are three things, well, it doesn't have to be three, but a couple of things that you do in your church or that you're aware of happening in other churches that are done for the local community, things that could be socially prescribed. And if you are able to, you could pop those in the chat and we can all have a look. If not, then feel free to just have a little reflect on your own. But it would be great to hear a couple of examples in the chat from people who are aware of activities that could support communities. Look. Oh yeah, amazing, loads. Yes, chair exercise classes, food pantries, renew wellbeing cafes, befriending, yeah, like those kind of drop-in spaces that people can come in and just have a chat, so important. Lunch club, yeah, amazing, with craft activities, exercises. Messy vintage, I love the idea of that. That's, I assume that's messy church, but for the other end of the age group. Amazing. Yeah, knitting groups, warm spaces, yeah. Lunch, cafes, yeah, and all of these things are so such brilliant examples of things that can be socially prescribed to. And social prescribing, of course, spans the whole age range, and so things like toddler groups, parent and child groups, those kind of things definitely could be socially prescribed to, as well as some of those things that maybe are more of a fit for kind of older members of the community. Yeah, walking groups, cooking courses, brilliant. Great, thank you so much everyone for sharing. What a lovely list of so many different things that all of you are doing, and all of these things are exactly the sort of things that social prescribers want to know about and want to be able to share with local communities, because they're the things that people need to be able to connect with others and in where appropriate, get the help and support they need. So yeah, brilliant list. Thank you so much for sharing those. I'm going to very briefly just mention that we did some research with Churchworks. We worked with a think tank called Theos to do some research all around faith and social prescribing. And so we looked at where are their activities being run by faith groups or by churches that are being socially prescribed to, what are the things that make those relationships work really well, and what are some of the barriers to that being done more broadly, but also the opportunities here to work together. And so I won't talk about this research sort of in lots of granular detail. I will share later, I'll share a link to our Churchworks website. If you want to read the research, then you're very welcome to. But what I will talk about briefly is just some of the kind of key things that we identified as part of that research around the really valuable resources that we have in faith groups and within our churches that make us really well suited to social prescribing. We've got all these brilliant activities, but we also, in the way that we run those activities, we function as anchor organisations in our local community. And what we kind of mean by anchor organisations is that we're a kind of like schools, like GP surgeries or some of those things, like community centres. We're a consistent, recognisable presence in our local communities. We often have a building, we have a space, we stay there for a long period of time. When we're offering community activities, we tend to offer them for a long period of time, and we don't kind of, unlike other services which are funded by the council or by other public services, we are often able to continue the support that we offer beyond particular funding cycles. And that we're trusted. There's someone here, a community worker, who said there's something really important about these churches and faith groups being here for the long haul, but also being there because they care about people and because they're part of the community. So that's a really important thing that we bring as church. The second thing that we identified that faith groups bring to our communities is that we have this convening power. We're networked, so often we exist as part of a denominational network. We often know the other churches nearby across denominations. We often have a space that we can invite people to meet in. People are aware of who we are, and so there's great opportunity here for the church to play a role in kind of networking and bringing together different community organisations across our area. And there's an example here from our report, from the research, which talks about an interfaith pilot initiative that happened in Brighton, where 2 churches and a Muslim community group worked together in order to kind of upskill and learn more about social prescribing and how they could then also connect with the NHS in their area. The third thing that I've sort of mentioned but is really important is that faith groups have often access to buildings and to volunteers. Lots of our churches have a church building, and there is, you may be aware, there's sort of a lot of conversation happening at the moment about how the NHS does not have adequate buildings in order to deliver the support that it needs to deliver in communities and in our neighbourhoods. And so the fact that we have buildings that we can offer to the local community is really important. But we also often have volunteers like yourselves who care about the community, care about people, and we want to serve those who live around us, live with us, which is also a really amazing and important thing in terms of how we can offer support to our social prescribing link workers. And then finally, we have experience and we have a culture of pastoral and spiritual care. And I think this is one of the most valuable things that we can bring as church to social prescribing into to the NHS, that we because of our faith and because of our perspective and how we see the world, we can we recognize the importance of giving people space and time, of listening to them, of seeing them as whole people. We recognize the value of spiritual health and spiritual care. And when people are going through difficult things, whether that's bereavement and loss or questions around meaning and purpose and hope, church can be a space where those conversations can happen and where it's okay to have those big questions, in a way that the NHS will never be best placed to provide in itself. There are so many great examples of social prescribing happening, where churches are doing brilliant things that are being socially prescribed to. So I wanted to just share a couple of those examples with you so you can kind of get a bit of a sense of what this looks like in practice. And the first of these is a church not too far from me in Bristol called Ebenezer Church, and they're registered as a warm welcome space. So on the Warm Welcome Spaces website, people can find them. They do things for the kind of breadth of age ranges. So they have an after school hangout for primary aged children once a week. And then they do things like community breakfast. They have a Kintsugi Hope wellbeing group, which is a kind of short course which enables people to discuss well-being, and to understand more about how they can support their well-being and take care of themselves. They have their drop-in taste cafe, and then they have their senior ministry, which is called Footprints, and that's every Wednesday afternoon. They also do special events. So the photo that's on the bottom on the right is their Christmas meal. And there's this quote which is a little bit lengthy, but I think is such a lovely quote from someone who runs the seniors ministry at Ebenezer Church. And she says that it's a place of company, of friendship, of support, which really helps address those issues of isolation and loneliness. And they've had people referred to them through social prescribing from the health centre, where it was felt that being with other people in a safe and caring environment would help in situations of low mood or depression. And she talks about that kind of privilege of being part of helping people feel valued and included, that can make such a difference to our lives. The second example is a church called St Stephen's in West Bowling in Bradford, and they've set up this project called Shine. Similarly, they offer lots of different things: community cafe, clothes bank, art clubs. They host social prescribing link workers to come from the local GP surgery and just spend a couple of hours in their community cafe, and make connections with those people who might need a bit of additional support and referrals to other support services. And the feedback that they've had from their social prescribing link worker, what they've said is the most valuable thing about this space is that they offer a welcoming place that people can come whenever they want to, have a cup of tea, have a sit down, stay as long as they like, and they can be in the quiet or they can just talk, and there are people on hand to listen and to offer support. And the GP surgery has funded them to have a couple of laptops and a phone. And so the other thing that they can do is come alongside people to help them access different services. So booking doctor's appointments, using the NHS app, making phone calls around accessing housing advice, or those sorts of things. They are able to just come alongside people and support them in doing that. And these sorts of things are so simple, but are so important for people for whom that is a really difficult thing to do. And so I just love that example. In terms of that kind of pastoral support, there are a few different things that I wanted to reference, but there's a church called Holy Trinity in Westby-on-Trim, and they offer an initiative called Space to Grieve, which you might have heard of, like grief cafes, and this is just a space that this lady called Jinnah, who experienced bereavement herself, she wanted to just set up a really simple cafe space for people to come who have been bereaved, and to sort of after the immediate shock and the funeral and those things around the loss, to be a space for people to be able to just kind of have those conversations about how they adapt back into this life after they have lost someone close to them. And social prescribers have been able to connect individuals that have come to them into space to grieve. On a similar note, some other organisations that are doing great stuff in this area are the Bereavement Journey, who have a short course that can be accessed by anyone, not just it's not just for Christians, but churches can run that, and they have an impact evaluation that has shown that that's been really effective in enabling people to move forward after a bereavement. And the Association of Chaplaincy and General Practice as well is a great organisation that supports volunteer or paid chaplains to go into GP surgeries and to then receive referrals from social prescribers or from GPs and just offer that listening service. And there are a few examples across the country where churches have kind of decided that they're going to offer volunteers to be trained to be chaplains in GP surgeries. And so we can send the links to those two websites, but I just also wanted to mention that as some resources that are great opportunities for us to offer that pastoral support to our communities. And then my final example is from our report, an organisation called Befriended in Sussex, and they're a Christian charity that works in that area. They work with churches to provide a whole range of different services, and social prescribers often refer people to Befriended so that older people can access these things. And so there's a mix of kind of befriending on the telephone or in person, tea parties, exercise classes, listening and chaplaincy, trips out, community choir, offering practical things that older people in the community might need. And Befriended is an amazing project that does so many things, but even if you in a church were able to offer one of those things, that would be a brilliant thing to be socially prescribed to. And then there's a couple of stories from our report that are anonymised, but I think are just really nice illustrations of where social prescribing can make a difference. We've got the example of Eleanor, who has lost her husband during COVID and has no other family or friends, and a GP connected her to a local church, and they have offered her befriending calls, and just having someone who's there to come alongside her and listen to her. We've got the story of Frank, who also recently lost his wife, and he struggles doing the kind of everyday tasks of getting out the house and getting his food. And so there's someone from a church who just comes along and helps him with those practical things. And then a slightly younger lady called Anna, but I wanted to include this example because I just love community choirs, and Anna was also became a little bit isolated, and she wasn't able to do some of the cooking and things that she that she enjoyed doing before COVID, and so she went along to this Christian community choir and has found a real love of singing in community. And as I'm sure we all know, there's a lot of research and interest at the moment around dementia and the value of singing for older people with dementia as well. And that's a great thing that we can do in our churches. And so moving on to what we can do, I won't go through all the details of our recommendations because some of them are more kind of NHS and public services facing. But unsurprisingly, at the centre of the research, the key recommendation that we wanted to make was around relationship building and the importance of actively networking with one another, of partnering, and of planning, and kind of intentionally wanting to look at how we can support each other across the health system and local faith groups. And we broke those recommendations down into neighbourhoods, places and systems. You can read about them in our report. But just to mention, at that neighbourhood level, our key recommendations, again, sort of unsurprisingly, are that faith leaders and social prescribing link workers network together, get to know one another, and that link workers start to make referrals, or continue to make referrals, as is the case in some areas, to faith groups. And we also recommend that faith groups and social prescribing link workers explore how they might be able to partner together and to develop their own projects in response to different needs that they're seeing. In terms of the kind of practical implementation of that, as part of our report, we also produced this how-to guide, and we've got two how-to guides. We've got one for social prescribing link workers, and we've got one for faith leaders. And I can share that with you in the chat and in the follow-up email. But this is what our how-to guide looks like, and it basically summarises the key parts of the report around how do we actually do this, how do we put this into practice. So there's a bit about what is social prescribing, why does that matter, and then we've got these kind of next steps for how do we go about working with social prescribers. And we've broken that down into this network, partnering and planning. And so networking is the sort of the first part of building that relationship. And there's like information in here about how do you find out who your social prescribing link workers are. Your local GP surgery should be able to tell you. It can be on their Meet the Team page of the website. It can be on the kind of wellbeing page of the website. If their website is not very good or you can't find the information, then you could drop into your GP and say, who is the social prescribing link worker? And the reception should be able to tell you. Social prescribing link workers, as many people do, get very, very many emails. And so we recommend that in terms of making that initial contact with your link worker, that you try to not send them an email and instead see if you can get a number and give them a call, or if you can drop round a poster about the work that you're doing, or I will show you in a moment, we've got this fact-finding form that basically just prompts you for all the information that it will be helpful for your link worker to know, and you can just fill that out and drop it round to the GP surgery and say, can you just give this to the social prescribing link worker, and give your details for them to get back to you. But this is, I guess, this networking part is really just like, let's just get the information to the link worker so they know who you are and they know that you're doing something, and then they can refer people, or they can get in touch with you. If you're able to talk to them and they're happy for you to add them, if you have a newsletter, then add them to that, or if you say, actually, I could just send you an email every couple of months with any change, if there are any changes to our timetable, or anything like that, then great. If they're happy with that, go ahead and do that. So that networking is the sort of beginning part of building that relationship. And then this guide goes through this kind of partnering. So explore if your link worker would be up for coming to your activity. Maybe if you run something like a warm welcome space or a community cafe, maybe they'd be happy to kind of do a bit of a drop-in space there. So people who come to your things that maybe wouldn't go to the GP can have a conversation with the link worker. We have recommended like meeting with other faith groups and kind of finding out, what are you doing in the local area? What are we doing? What is the need that we see? Is there a way that we could kind of refer to each other? Or maybe there's a way that we can kind of complement the work that one another are doing for our community. And the other thing that we have mentioned here is about holding a community listening event where you can ask your community about how they experience health and well-being. What are the things that that they feel they need in order to improve their well-being, and being able to offer that kind of insight and input to your link worker or to others who are working in an NHS setting can be really valuable in terms of them being able to think about how they might be able to best adapt their services. So then, yeah, this final bit, which is about planning, and this is sort of what, once you've had a bit of experience and kind of got a bit more connected with social prescribing, this is an opportunity to think about how you might be able to kind of integrate a little bit further with your social prescribing team and your GP surgery. And so we've suggested here that you might like to identify someone in your congregation who could be a social prescribing lead, who could be that point of contact with your GP surgery. You might want to think about whether you could become a warm welcome space, and then enable people to find what you're doing a little bit more easily online. And explore whether you might be able to kind of convene regular forums or discussion groups between faith groups, social prescribing link workers, social workers, community nurses, the police. We know of a couple of examples of churches who have kind of held those sort of forums, which have been really effective and helpful for the local community. And then, as I mentioned, we've got this fact sheet at the end of the resource, and that just prompts you to put some of the information in, things that we know that the NHS need to know about, so things like safeguarding and just being really clear about any explicit faith content. And so it is totally fine if you have prayer or if you have parts of your offer that are specifically about faith, but the important thing is just being able to be really honest and open about that. And so we want people to be able to be referred and not get a surprise or feel uncomfortable. And so as long as when the link worker says, would you like to go to this thing, and there will be prayer at this point, if that person knows about it and they're happy with it, then that's totally fine. So we just need to make sure that we're really clear on that. And then we've got, these kind of bullet points on how to connect with your social prescribing link worker and what you might want to say to them in conversation. So just to wrap up, this is if you fancy using a QR code, then here's a QR code, which takes you to the Churchworks website, and our report and our how-to guides are there. I will also can put those in the chat. We can also share them on the email. I also wanted to finally mention a couple of opportunities. This Thursday on the 26th is National Social Prescribing Day. And so I would really encourage you, why not reach out to your GP and your social prescriber this week and say, oh, it's National Social Prescribing Day, and this is what we do in our church, and we'd love for you to refer people as appropriate and helpful. But there also may well be events going on near you around social prescribing, so it might be worth kind of doing a bit of an internet search on your area and social prescribing and see whether there are sort of networking events or celebration events. And so in terms of sort of a couple of next steps for us, I suggest you have a look at the how-to guide, and that you have a look at the National Academy of Social Prescribing and their resources. But I also just thought it would be helpful to mention, if you are not aware of these things already, that NAVCA is a national organisation that brings together all the different voluntary networks, voluntary and community networks in different areas. And often those organisations will know about social prescribing, they'll know about what's going on in their local area. So it might be helpful to go onto the NAVCA website, and there's a little map, and you can find in your area who the kind of, what the organisation is that's responsible for coordinating the voluntary and community work. in that area. And if you get in touch with them, they may well have resources or networks that are around social prescribing and can help you integrate into that. And similarly, integrated care, the Integrated Care Board, the Integrated Care System is the kind of regional NHS body that is responsible for the health of that particular part of the country. And you can go onto the NHS website, find your local Integrated Care Board, and then they will have their own website, and they will have resources about social prescribing on there. So you could also have a look on there for potential events and resources. And I think that is everything from me. I will put some of those bits in the chat.
Wow, Esther, thank you so much. And thank you for battling through some of the background noise, all the good fun of being part of a team. That's been so helpful. And every time I wrote down a question, a few minutes later, you answered the question. So mine have been answered, but we have got a few in the chat. So let me read out the first one. Alice asks, how do we continue to welcome new people into groups, preventing cliques, whilst getting to know those attending more deeply and bringing faith into the conversations? So how can we welcome new people in the group and still get to know the ones we've already got more deeply? How do you strike that balance in your experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess it depends on what sort of thing you're doing, and how many volunteers you have, what those volunteers are doing. I think it can be really helpful where you have a little bit of structure already in your offer. And so things like Renew Wellbeing, for instance, offer that sort of gentle structure where anyone can come in, and then you have your kind of time of reflection and prayer. And you don't necessarily have to do it in that way, but maybe having a kind of, this is the part where we're all together, and then we're now just going to have a time of prayer or a time of reflection, and kind of that just being a consistent thing that happens that you invite people into, can be quite a nice way to give people choice in terms of accessing the faith-based content. I think so much of that kind of not having cliques and inviting people in is really about, it's about culture, isn't it? And it's about what you think that space is for. And I think it's probably part of the sort of briefing of volunteers and running that space is saying, this is for everyone, and we want everyone to feel at home here. So we all have a role to play as part of that. But I definitely, I know in Ebenezer Church, for instance, that they have found that people actually do, that when there have been new people come, they do welcome them and include them in conversation. And I think if that's the understanding of that, that's the purpose of the space. The space for that.
Thank you, Esther. That's really helpful. And I think there's always something, there's an important piece of work to be done among our cohort of older people, that they are not only there receiving, of course we want them to receive, we want to bless them, but they are part of the mission of the church when they rock up to that knitting group, that warm space, or anything else. And so, yeah, actually sort of inviting them into that and being part of it while still receiving what they need at the same time, is, as you said, culturally an important thing as well. So she also says, how do we keep connected through befriending, but prevent reliance on us and continue to make new connections? So there's this question really about over-reliance. How do we help people come and find their feet in our group rather than just be totally reliant on us?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of part of where there is this real value of being connected into the broader picture around social prescribing and other things that are on offer, that being aware of what other things we might be able to refer people to in our local area can be really helpful. And so if there are particular needs that people have, and being able to refer them to other places is really useful. I think it's also where having a befriending service sometimes alongside something like a community cafe, or something that you can invite people to that is kind of enables them to network with other people, can be really valuable in terms of giving that person some more relationships beyond just you.
Yeah, that was really good ideas. Thank you, Esther. I don't know whether you know the answer to this, but in Scotland, does each GP surgery have a link worker? Do you know what's going on in Scotland?
Not in detail. My guess would be that it's probably not that dissimilar from England. And I think if you were to go to your GP and talk and ask the reception about social prescribing, I'm sure that they would know what you mean, and would be able to give you an answer of some sort.
Good advice. Thank you. We have a question. What about arranging transport for people to local groups in a village setting? Is that something that you've seen as done as part of social prescribing, people arranging transport?
Yes, this is a really good question. I'm trying to think if I am aware of any social prescribing specific examples around this. I know that there's the community. I'll have to find out what the acronym is, but there is like a community transport
Yes.
organisation that work in particular areas to connect people to their local community activities. I'm not aware of a church that's doing that specifically, but I'm sure it's possible.
It would be amazing, wouldn't it, if the three work together, the social prescribers, the church activity, and the local community transport. And it may well already be happening in some places, but it seems that sometimes transport, especially among older people, can be a bit of an issue, especially in the winter months as well. So yeah, some area of development.
Yes,
we'll let the
definitely.
social prescribers know. Carrie asked, do you have a how-to resource for hosting a community listening or engagement event, please? Do you have those sorts of resources, Esther?
We don't. What I could do is, so we don't have a resource, but I could connect you with one of the churches that we worked with in our research who did that work. So I'm happy I can put my email in the chat, and I'm happy for that to be in the follow-up email as well.
So Carrie or anyone, if you want to connect with Esther directly over that question, please do. And we'll pop the email address in tomorrow's or later's email as well. Thank you. Tanya asked, would a link worker share the knowledge they have of the places they subscribe to so that we could share that information with those who visit our spaces? This may cut their workload, possibly, but network all that is available more widely. So yeah, could it be shared from the church's group or activity? What else is going on in the area?
Yes, it would vary. It's definitely a conversation worth having with your link worker. There are some parts of the country where there is a kind of publicly accessible database of the different things that are being offered in the community, and your link worker might be able to be like, here you go, here's the list of things. There are other contexts where there's a database, but the like GP surgery would be paying for a particular access to it. And so they might not be able to then just send you a link. but they may be able to kind of tell you verbally some of the bits that are going on near you. Or they might have their own kind of database that they've just made themselves, which will be the case in some areas, and they might just be able to then send you a document that has a list of things. So unfortunately, like a lot of stuff around public service, it really varies with the area, but definitely ask and see what they say.
Yeah, and slightly not so much on a social prescribing front, but we also know that sometimes there's someone within the local churches together that will draw together a list of really helpful activities for older people in particular. And I would imagine that a great proportion of whatever's on that list would be very fitting for social prescribing. So I suppose that's potentially another way to find out what's going on and to share helpful information with the older people that come to the groups. We've got another Scottish question, Esther. Get ready. Is there a Scottish equivalent of NAVCA, as it seems to only cover England? Do you know if there's an equivalent?
Yeah, that's a very sensible question. I am sure there must be. Yeah, there must be. Just going to quickly Google. Yeah, there is. Oh, okay. There's no direct NAVCA equivalent, but there is the SCVO, which is the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations, which is the main area of support for charities and community groups. So I don't know if that will be broken down by region in the same way as NAVCA, but that's probably worth having a look at and seeing what's on there. That seems to be the main thing.
Okay, that's very helpful and very speedy. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the questions that have been put in the chat. Hopefully people will really benefit from our follow-up email that will have some of these links in as well. I feel like for those who are motivated, you could actually really now spend the rest of the week getting into this, including joining in with the National Social Prescribing Day on Thursday in some kind of way, maybe letting your church leader know about some of the things that you found out about today. I think would be really important, not just for your seniors groups that you're doing, but also for things like toddler groups and other groups that would be really helpful to members of the community of all ages. Esther, before I go on to share a few notices, would you please pray for our church champions in these endeavours to connect with and bless the older people in our communities?
Yeah, I'd love to. Lord Jesus, we thank you so much for the opportunities that we have to be able to offer people in our communities love and care, and invite them into our community and invite them to know a bit more of who you are and your love for them. And I thank you for all of these church champions, for everything that they do to love others. And I pray that that you will bless them, that you will provide for them. And we ask for new opportunities to be able to collaborate with social prescribers and with the health system locally, so that we can open our doors and offer our community space to those who don't have that. And Lord, I pray that among this group today, that there will be really exciting stories to tell of people who have come into the church, who have made connections, who have felt at home, who have felt valued and loved. And yeah, I pray for a kind of snowballing of blessing through those connections, that more people might feel welcome in church, and that those of us who are already there will also be blessed by connecting with new people. We thank you that you love to work with us to love others. And we pray for peace and for blessing on all of us for today. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Esther, for all that you've brought to us today. It's been absolutely wonderful. And we also have a blog of yours on our website at the moment. So that's something else that people could perhaps share with those who weren't able to be here today.